Welcome back to the Forex Fortress, of which I've been having plenty of technical difficulty today, and also just many mess ups on my own behalf as well. But we're here, and it's all good, so let's all join hands and look at some good old Dixie price action, of which that should round out our buys for all of the major US dollar parents, and a little bit of Bitcoin action, which we'll follow up on a little bit later as well. Anyways, did pop back up to the 10 simples we spoke about yesterday, somewhere around that 93 and a quarter to $93.50 marker, of which we would be looking for some pullback now. So with that in mind, I still do have a little bit of a short-term and medium-term downside bias on Dixie, but of course, with perspective on the greater whole, we are closer to a macro area than not. So while there is short-term and medium-term downside implied here, long-term, I still do have to remind myself that this is more or less a bottoming area around the low $92 region. So with that in mind, we're probably going to be looking for a little bit of upside bias on most of the US dollar pairings and a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit on Bitcoin as well. Actually, before we do that, let's go and check on the 4 hour right here. Yeah, I would say downside here as well. Probably back down to what was this last week's low? No, maybe not. Yeah, it actually was last week's low. Okay, nice. All right, so we'll start off with Aussie Dollar, of which I absolutely fucking hate this one. It's quickly becoming my least favorite of the majors to be looking at, mostly because it just doesn't really seem to do what the other ones kind of follow with it. But yesterday we did say that it was likely to pop back up towards the 70. What was it, like 71.8 to 72 cent region, of which would I still be holding on to that, or are we coming into a local top right now? This one, you know, if we're going off of all the other majors, I would essentially say yes, the upside's still kind of implied here, but with the way that this one acts like over the long period of time, it just seems to be one of the bigger losers. So with that in mind, I would, you know, yes, I technically should have an upside bias here back up towards like 71.8 to about 72 cents region. However, I do think that is very appropriate to be having a point of failure right here, which is very easily just our last little prior low right around 71 cent even. So as long as we're above there, yes, short-term upside buys kind of in line with what Dixie saw as well. But as we've seen in the past, this one does not, certainly not one of the more strong ones, we'll call it that, relatively speaking. Anyways, moving on to, and actually I should talk about what happens if we break 71 cents. I'll be looking for another move back down here towards about 70.5 cents, we'll call it, right back down around here would look about right. Yeah, about 70.5, a little bit above there. All right, moving on to CAD dollar right here. What do we see? Yeah, short-term upside, as we spoke about yesterday, popping back up towards 76 cent region. We did hit our downside target yesterday at 75.50-ish region on this nice little horizontal right here. I look at this one as essentially putting in some higher lows on the lower term time frames, and yes, that would still kind of hold true on the daily here as well. So with that in mind, I'd probably be looking for this one to pop back up over the next day, a little bit above 76 cent region. And then we'll come back to it after that. Of course, you know, just like what we looked at on Aussie Dollar, there is a nice little point of failure, and that would essentially be, we could actually move this up just a smidgen here to basically where we put in that higher low on a closing basis at 75.65 region. So that would be essentially what I'm looking at right there. And I'm short-term bullish as long as we are living above that region. If that region does get destroyed, I'll be looking for another move back down towards about 75.25, which I'll actually put a nice little horizontal in right now, just in case if it actually does break down. But again, you know, a little bit of an upside bias there. Euro pound, what do we see? This one's sideways AF. Daily, same sort of thing as well. I do think that, you know, it is going to try to put in a major low right here, to be fair, but the short term, do we come back down towards 90.40 first, or do we head back up towards 91.30 first? I don't really have a strong opinion on this one. If I had to call it, yes, I do think that it does ultimately pull through to the upside, but coming back down to that basing area is not super problematic. Looking at the lower term timeframes, I would actually look for some upside more sooner rather than later, especially with historical volatility percentile this low right here. We are going to be looking at a move on this one relatively soon, and I do think yes, momentum does seem to be shifting onto the upside, so fair enough short term. What about euro dollar right here? We were bullish on this one yesterday, which would I still be bullish on? Oh, actually did not follow through on this one. Fair enough. I still do like it actually here. Short term, however, what are we looking at? Yeah, I'd probably be looking for another short term move back up towards about 118.5 region. Yes, it did come back down to the 10 simple, of which yesterday I was looking for continuation to the upside, but this is overall still kind of following the I wouldn't say long term, but the current daily trend. So with that in mind, yes, I do think that it puts in a base here. And of course, just like the other ones, point of failure would be back down below about 118, actually even. So below there, yes, I do look for another drive back down towards about 117.5, which we'll put in a nice little horizontal right here. But for right now, short-term upside implied, of which I would be looking for about 118.5 region. So pretty much all of them, you know, short-term boolah-ish for now. Pound yen looks like like a sad sack of shit. So, what do you make out of this? You don't really make much out of this. If anything, momentum is turning on to the downside. What are we looking at on the weekly? Weekly is pretty atrocious here over the long period of time. I always like to remind myself that long term, this one is intensely bearish, but can we fit in some short term upside here? I think yesterday I actually was looking for some short term upside. Would I be holding on to that today as well? No call on this one. I don't feel inclined either which way. This one's kind of similar to the way that Aussie dollar is, and that just does different things in accordance to the rest of the market. If I had to call it right now, what would I say? I'd say no trade. It's long term again, very fucking bearish. Short term, medium term, I feel like if it had a chance to go up, it would have happened yesterday. So I suppose the force of gravity will take over at that point. And yes, if I had to call it, 134.5 is where I'd be looking towards, but I do not feel confident on that one. Pound dollar, upside implied. Yes, on the weekly, still looking okay right there. What about on the daily? Same thing. I'd still be looking for the daily to pop back up towards 131.5, we'll call it, over the next week or so. Same thing on the 4 hour here as well. Yes, upside implied. So another one, a little bit shorter on the 4 hour, probably more so around about 137 to 138 region. But yes, looking okay right there. What about yen dollar? Same sort of thing here. Short-term boolah-ish, 95.70-ish region. I believe that we did hit our 95.55 target from yesterday. Yes, we did. So I'd be looking for this one to continue onwards and upwards. Again, long-term, very constructive. So this one's bullish short-term, medium-term, and long-term. The other one's more or less bullish short-term, and some of them intensely bearish long-term. But the ones that are healthy definitely are showing themselves right now. Forgot to look at Swiss franc dollar as well. My bad. This one, another one of the more healthy-ish ones, we'll call it. Looking at the weekly, long-term, very much bullish. Playing a nice little range on the weekly between about 109.5 to where we are right now, a little bit higher than that at 110.5. Short term, yeah, I'd be looking for this one to pop back up towards 110.5 and probably beyond. So short term, medium term, and long term bullish on this one. Swiss franc and yen dollar are both some of the more healthy ones long term. Anyways, what else we got? I think that's it for my major pairs. Let's go check out gold. Gold yesterday we were looking for sideways and up, and I'd basically be saying the same thing if I had to call it right now, popping back up towards about 1920-ish region. Daily look, however, but what do you make out of this fucking line chart? So yeah, short term, a little bit of upside there. I don't feel too strong about this one though. Either which way, looking at a weekly, same sort of thing. I'm not getting too much from that chart. So with that in mind, let's actually go do a little bit of a follow-up on Bitcoin right here, of which we did get the northern break that we're looking for from this morning's video. Initiated about that first sort of closure above 13,150-ish region right here. We got 13,155 just barely, but it does count by ball sack hair. Also taken out yesterday's high as well at the 13,270-ish region. Both of those were criteria for continuation. In this case, I would still be looking for an extension all the way back up towards the ripe old price of about 13,650 to 13,700. We did hit the lower echelon of the blue box territory right here almost perfectly from this morning's video. But yes, I actually do think that it's going to give another pop back up here and grind this area out. And here's where things get a little bit weird for Bitcoin, because once it does get into that region, I would not look for it to put in a top like immediately. What's likely to happen, especially on highs like this, is you're going to grind areas like this out, and you're going to see a lot of wicks probably above this region, but no closures above this region. So over the next few days is going to be intense, I imagine, in Bitcoin land, as there's probably going to be several tries at around 14,000, I imagine. However, without any sort of a closures above the 1.414 Fibonacci extension right here, I would be very hesitant to call any like major continuation plays into the 14,000s for like prolonged closures like a daily and above. Low term timeframes, yeah, they can probably do that, but the higher term timeframes are kind of what is going to be what governs price action in an area like this, which realistically doesn't even have too much history to begin with. I mean, going back on over here, here's your 13.7 pivot. Here's your next level on the daily, which would be about 14,250. So this would be another area to be aware of if things do get highly volatile, which they likely will if Bitcoin does head up a little bit more. And I'd make a nice little liquid zone between about 14,250 to 14,500 actually. So $250 range right there. And you know how Bitcoin plays. It gets crazy when it gets on these major runs, and I believe that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So with that in mind, I'm curious what the lower term time frame momentum oscillator is looking like. Yeah, 4 hour looking very, very healthy right here. Yes, I'm sure that someone's going to point out that there's a a trend line right here? Yes, indeed there is. Do I think that it plays out? Well, it doesn't matter what my opinion is. Price action is going to tell you sooner rather than later anyways. But if I had to call it, I don't think that it's going to break it. Here's the thing though, if you do see it break the trend line, that's going to be a damn good insight that you're going to see Bitcoin actually try one of those ripping moves towards a higher 13,000s, maybe even low 14,000s. And then, like I said, it's a caution area, really. It's a caution area, even though short term, yes, I am bullish here. But I do want to once again kind of say caution at the upper 13, lower 14 region, as long term it does kind of make sense for a basing area or perhaps one of those like long form consolidations being birthed upon that region. I think that we're going to go into one of those sideways AF markets probably in the next month again, which everyone's got to fucking love, man. Everyone's got to love. Get the cheese girders out and start rubbing your pee-pee holes with it, because it is going to be just like what you saw before. You remember it back here, you remember it back here, you remember it back. Actually, we're not even on the right time frames, and that's how bad it fucking looks. Jesus, man. But you know what I'm talking about in September, also in October right here, or sorry, September right here. August right here, a couple months in May and June right here, and of course February right here, and 3 months in 2019. You know how Bitcoin does it, plays like those 1 to 3 month long consolidations, and I do believe that we're probably going to see one of those emerge after this next sort of tippy-toppy run. So, again, putting my thoughts together, I do think that there's more on this run, yes, but I am cautious here. And also, here's something very important right now, especially as Bitcoin does kind of, teeter on its little soul right there. How would you know that this is actually going to top out right here and we get a little bit of a fake out? Well, it's actually quite easy in this particular case. Any sort of a 2-hour dildo closure, or basically anything above an hourly below 13,150, yes, this is going to turn into not a little bit, but a pretty nasty trap. And I'd be looking for moves back down below 13,000 to 12.7 relatively quickly. And then we could talk about this area being your next, major top. But for right now, I do think that there is more on this run. Looking at 12-hour momentum oscillators, you can see, again, we're pretty damn cooked here. Even with that last closure, it is still yet to cross back onto the upside. 12-hour RSI wouldn't technically be putting in bearish divergence right now because we do not have confirmed local highs. But you can imagine that, the next time that it does start to stall out a bit, it will start to initiate some divergence plays. So, again, putting it all together, a little bit more upside here. But I do think that we are coming relatively close to it, probably over the next couple weeks, I'd imagine. Bitcoin does put in the next local high, and then we get to play out some of that nice sideways and down bullshit into probably into December, I'd imagine. Anyways, I'm getting way ahead of myself right now. Is there anything that I'm missing on Bitcoin though? What would be something like obvious? What would be some? Here's something that would be obvious. What if Bitcoin closes a daily above 13,650, the 1 spot 414 Fibonacci extension? Well, then I would be looking for that 14,200ish region to get tested. But for right now, just kind of playing within it. I'd be looking for a couple more spikes within this region, and then we'll come back tomorrow and check out what's going on. But right now, we're just seeing the follow through from the same scenarios that we spoke about over the last few days. Nice little ascending triangle breaking up to the upside. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best of the best. I'd like to wish you the happiest. Take care, and until next time.